This time on Dave's Game Room, we're going to be taking a look at some more Ridge Racer games in part 3 of the Ridge Racer series of games. Welcome back to Dave's Game Room, guys. Today I'm going to be taking a look at Ridge Racer 64 on the N64, Ridge Racer 5 on the PlayStation 2, and a bonus feature with Ridge Racer Type 4. So we'll kick this video off with Ridge Racer 64 that was released on the N64. This is kind of an amalgamation of a few of the Ridge Racer games that were released on the PlayStation. This seems to have a few sort of elements from the PlayStation Ridge Racer games and Rage Racer. It goes back to the original format of just basically having the Grand Prix mode. It's actually separated Grand Prix and Time Attack out now. You've got the quick play option, which just takes you straight into a race. The Grand Prix option, there you can see 3 tracks: Ridge Racer, Novice, Revolution, Novice, and Renegade Novice. The cars, you'll recognise some of the names from the original Ridge Racer and from Revolution. Here's my favourite, the Ryukyu, or Ryukyu. Somebody's going to tell me one day how to pronounce that properly. Selecting the transmission, and off we go. So you can select the soundtrack as it's zooming you into the car.
3, 2.
And, you know, besides the obvious thing with the N64 that I've said on a few videos now, where the sort of strange graphical, technological stuff that Nintendo did with the graphics on the N64, this game actually does still look pretty cool. I'm quite impressed with how it looks. One thing I will say about it straight away, and becomes more evident as the game gets faster as you progress and get faster cars, the handling of this game, I mean, the car handling is so snappy, it's so ultra responsive, too responsive in my opinion. They needed to make it a bit more like the original Ridge Racer game on the PlayStation, because it's now so responsive that you'll end up oversteering yourself. As you can see, I'm all over the place. I suppose if I got used to it and played this a bit more, it probably would be a bit more second nature and I wouldn't be so erratic with the handling and the steering, but graphically you can see it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Going into the tunnel here, you'll all recognise, all you Ridge Racer fans, including myself of course, that this track is the first track from the first Ridge Racer game. So I've hit the wall. The drifting mechanics are very similar to that found in the first Ridge Racer game, and I feel the way the cars sort of slide around the corners reminds me a lot of Type 4. So into that tunnel again, I'm on to another lap. Basically this race, I'm going to win it and then you move on to the next one. It's very similar to the original Ridge Racer games in that respect. Graphically, other than the blurry nature of that anti-aliasing that Nintendo used with the 64, I think it looks really good actually. I think compared to the Sony PlayStation original, the graphics do seem to have that bit more detail. So around the sharp corner, you can see I'm sliding it. The car feels like it's got a bit of weight to it, so it's not quite as loose as it was in the original Ridge Racer title on the PlayStation. Again, the handling, you've got to get used to the handling. You've got the same few camera views that you get, or in fact you've got an additional camera view where the chase cam is a little bit further away, as you had on Ridge Racer on the original PlayStation and Revolution and Type 4 and Rage Racer. And you've got the rear view mirror, which was introduced in Ridge Racer Revolution. So, I've won that race. You get a really cool replay.
You did it! You're the champion!
So just let the replay run. I've got to say, I'm not overly impressed with the sort of blurriness and the pretty choppy, pretty bad frame rate of the replays. It doesn't look too impressive. And just to get it out of the way, guys, I'm not using emulation in the absolute slightest. This is running off of a real Nintendo 64, a PAL model, via S-Video, because that's the best I can get out of my 64 because it's not RGB modded. And it's going into my XRGB Mini and being pushed out at 1080p, so it's being upscaled. So it looks a lot better than it would do if I plugged it directly into the TV, as I'm sure you can appreciate. So, I'm the champion after winning just one race. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? So now we're going to go back to the main menu, and I'm actually going to load up a save game because I've actually got a save where I've actually got further along in the game, as you'll see when I get there. The saves that was originally on the cartridge before I picked it up. So I've selected Quick Race, and you can see it scrolls round and you end up just jumping straight into a race instead of being selective as to what track and what car you're going to use. It just throws you straight in, which I suppose is pretty cool. And here you can see from my save game, I've pretty much completed the entire game with the exception of the last race. Did this quite some time ago, and that's why it's all there, and I can only remember bits of it. So I've chosen the Revolution track this time, and I'm just cycling through so you can see some of the cars. A lot of the names you'll recognise, and then you get to the cars like the 13th Racing Kid, the 13th Racing, and the Angel car. There you can see the Angel car, and then there's some cars that I kind of don't recognise. Some that I think were from Rage Racer, but I'm not sure. And I think that's from Type 4, that car. I think you can get that in Type 4 in your garage. So this car is absolutely madness. I've done this just to kind of demonstrate how much I struggle with the faster cars.
3, 2, 1.
So again, the Revolution track this time instead of the original Ridge Racer track. And this car, when it gets going, the speed of it's unbelievable. Just look at me blitzing all those cars. And then I'm struggling with the handling. I'm going to hit the barrier a few times. I'm going to try and drift around corners. Oh, very nearly getting there, and then just crashing all over the place. So that's the problem. The handling with the faster cars, it's not very forgiving. It's a bit more snappy. It does take some getting used to. I mean, back in the day when I played this game, I was used to it. I did all right on it. In fact, I did pretty well because I pretty much nearly completed the whole game. But it just takes some getting used to. It really would. I'd have to knuckle down and play with this car and the tracks a few times to get used to it again before I could have an attempt at that extreme last race that you saw that I haven't done yet. And again, just like in Ridge Racer and Revolution, there are boss cars, but there are more boss cars that you can race against this time, and by beating them, you obtain them and you can use them, which is pretty cool. So there you go, just going to show you a lap of me struggling with this car, with the ferocious speed of it, with the fact that the handling is very, very twitchy, as I said, trying to drift around corners, slapping into walls. It is a bit more forgiving when you hit a wall. It doesn't slow you down as much as it did on the PlayStation, which I think is pretty cool. Again, that takes a cue from Rage Racer and Type 4 on the PlayStation, the fact that they've decided to do that. So all in all, this version of the game's pretty good. I recommend it if you've got a 64 and you like a bit of Ridge Racer. So, on to what was a launch title on the Sony PlayStation 2. This is Ridge Racer 5, and this is the last Ridge Racer game for me that was really, really awesome and really, really good. After this, when you went to Ridge Racer 6, that was a PS3 launch title, an Xbox 360 launch title, we started going into the realms of drifting so that you get these nitrous bottles filling up, and then you can deploy nitrous when you've got it. That annoys the hell out of me. I don't like it. I prefer to just race and drift and not worry about building up turbo and when to use it or nitrous and what have you. I think the introduction of that for me ruined the series. Leave that to games like, Burnout and Need for Speed, where you do a bit of extreme drive and it builds up a NOS and you can use it. I know this is an arcade game, and a lot of racing arcade games nowadays are like this. You do a bit of extreme driving, you maybe get some air, you jump, you spin spectacularly, you get some nitrous, but yeah, I didn't like it, so this is the last of the Ridge Racer games that doesn't have that, before Ridge Racer 6 included it. And I'm just not even going to go there when I'm talking about Ridge Racer Unbounded, guys, because that game is awful. It's not even a Ridge Racer game. So, Ridge Racer 5 gives you the same kind of idea of a team like you had in Rage Racer and like you had in Type 4. So, you can choose the basic colour design of the car that you want to use. And I'm saving it, or did I not save it? I can't remember. And then I'm going to choose to race, but there are more options here. You can design the car, you can go to the garage and view the cars that you've accumulated along the way, view your records, save your progress, all makes sense. Go to options and make changes to settings, and exit and race. So, and Grand Prix, Time Attack, and Free Run. So they've included a few more modes. So, Grand Prix, let's go for it. Let's go for the Ridge State Grand Prix. So there's the first series that I've got available to me. And there's some sort of radio stations they reference that are in the game as well. Some of the music in this game is pretty cool. Again, it's very much an acquired taste. I do appreciate there's a lot of people out there that are not going to like, kind of Japanese techno-y house electronica kind of music, so they're going to hate it. So here's a selection of cars that you get, which have all, again, got different characteristics and a different body types, all that kind of thing. I quite like the look of this one, so I'm going to go for this one, I think. And I've selected the car. Then you get a selection of engines, which again, you accumulate those as you win and progress through the various racing series in this game. And this track again, some of the design cues for this track are from other Ridge Racer games. I've noticed there's some corners that remind me of Ridge Racer and Revolution. There's a corner that reminds me of one of the tracks from Rage Racer. It definitely does remind me of a bit of an amalgamation of the other games. But that's not to say it's a bad thing, because it's really, really good. And for me, the graphics, even though we're talking about a PS2 game that was released back in 2000, I still think the graphics are really good. With the PS2, it connects to my XRGB Mini scaler using Component, because I was asked a question about how does my PS2 look so sharp and so good on a HD TV. So if that person does manage to see this video, that's how I do it. And thanks for the question, by the way. So, as you can see, I've got off the line. This all reminds me of the first Ridge Racer game. You go into a tunnel with Pac-Man above you on the digital screen. And the handling, I like the handling. Even though I made a right pig zero that first corner, I quite like the way the handling is on this game. I think it's pretty cool, you know. Drifting around corners, again, cars feel like they've got weight to them. And I know I've already said it, but I think the graphics look pretty good on this game. I'm quite impressed. So you can see I'm climbing up through the positions. I'm up to second place now, about to take the lead, or at least attempt to take the lead, and then I get this corner completely wrong and lose some positions.
What's up with him?
So 3 laps this race is. You can see me going into the tunnel again. Again, reminding me of the original Ridge Racer game. And I'm out of shape and I'm all over the place. And because of that, I'm then completely wrong for the next corner and I'm into the barriers. But yeah, I keep saying about the graphics, they still impress me. This does look pretty cool for an early PlayStation 2 game. It's really awesome. And these are the kind of games that if you are a casual racer, you know, you're not someone who's interested in tweaking wing angles, gear ratios and upgrading cars and all that kind of stuff that you do in, you know, Gran Turismos or your Forza Motorsport games of these days, then this is the game, or this type of game is the one you want to play. It's fun, it's interesting. Today's equivalent would be something like Drive Club on the Sony PlayStation 4, because that's more focused on just arcadey handling. There's none of the, as I say, tweaking gear ratios, wing angles, all that kind of stuff, which is awesome for online. I mean, admittedly, this game that we're looking at here, Ridge Racer 5, online wasn't really around for consoles at that particular time, at least not mainstream. So you wouldn't have to worry about that with this game anyway. But yeah, check out Drive Club, guys. More content has been added to that since me and Mike took a look at it. Quite a few Dave's Game Room, Dave and Mike reviews episodes ago, but it's worth checking out. So I'm on the 3rd lap, still getting to grips with the handling and remembering how this game was. I did play this back in the day on the PS2 when it came out, on a friend's PS2 when he got it, and really thought it was good. It was quite enjoyable. But then, for quite some time, I didn't play this. I didn't actually pick it up with my PS2. If you watch the Dave and Mike Christmas special, as you'll hear, both myself and Mike didn't actually get a PS2 for probably a couple of years after it came out. We weren't original sort of early adopters of the system. So that's how I managed to miss this game. I did pick it up later on, and I thought it was really, really awesome and really cool. And it's definitely a good game to add to the Ridge Racer collection that I've got as well. Even though I'm not a big fan of the turbo drifting and nitrous and all that kind of jazz, I will pick up Ridge Racer 6 and 7. So here's the replay. Again, I think the replays look really awesome. I keep saying about the PS2 graphics and still being impressed with them now, but I think it looks awesome, guys. So just a quick look at a bit of the replay here. And I successfully cleared the round, presumably because I finished 3rd. I suspect if I finished lower than 3rd, I wouldn't have cleared it. So on to the next race. But we're not actually going to do the next race. And it's time for me to kind of introduce the next part, the bonus feature of this video. Now, Ridge Racer Type 4. Originally, it came with a disc. A demo disc, a bonus disc, whatever you want to call it. I think in the US and Japan, it was the Ridge Racer Turbo disc, which had a menu that showcased Ridge Racer Turbo, the original Ridge Racer, and also just some demos. Here in Europe, we had what was just called the Ridge Racer High Spec demo disc. And ours was slightly different. We didn't get the menu. We were just launched straight into the game. So, here is some Ridge Racer footage, or Ridge Racer Turbo, or Ridge Racer High Spec, however you want to call it. I've tried to keep this video at the 50 frames per second so that you can actually see this game running at its full frame rate. If you're playing this on, or playing the US or Japanese version on a modified console, or on a real console for that matter, a normal console, it would be in 60 frames per second, 60 hertz, and it would be even smoother and quicker than this, guys. I was just impressed by this demo. You get a bit of an introduction to how this came about. Basically, the developers of Ridge Racer, when they were working on Type 4, they came across this idea of, would it be feasible to have a racing game on the PlayStation that runs at 60 frames per second? So it was almost a sort of a proof of concept, if you like, a tech demo that you could play. They actually decided to do it by making some tweaks to the way the graphics were, because you'll notice that it looks a bit different to the original Ridge Racer, which they've also included like a demo of the original Ridge Racer on this same disc so that you can check it out. I think it's fantastic, and I actually wish that when the PS2 came out, they actually released the full Ridge Racer, maybe even Revolution, Ridge Racer and Type 4, utilise the extra PS2, the extra horsepower of the PS2, so that we'd have that at the high frame rate, because it would be amazing. Playing this game at the higher frame rate makes a massive difference. Admittedly, this demo doesn't give you everything. It doesn't give you all the cars and all the different race modes and track variations, but you can still, I believe, get, I think, one of the boss cars, or maybe two. I've certainly seen the 13th Racing Devil that you can get in this game. You can race against it when you complete all the tracks, all the modes. And I think you can also get the White Angel, from what I remember seeing somewhere, but that might have been a fake video that someone kind of put together. I can't remember. But yeah, this game, I mean, it's just silky smooth. It's incredible. Or this tech demo, I should say. It's just amazing. I really wish they'd release this somehow. It wouldn't have been possible to release this with all, the 12 cars on the track, including yourself, and all the other stuff. I very much doubt on the PlayStation. I don't think it would have had the power to cope with driving all of that at 50/60 frames per second, depending on where you were in the world. But as you can see from the replay, it's just silky smooth and really, really impressive, guys. I think it's fantastic. If you do manage to come across a copy of Type 4 with this demo disc, and you're intrigued like I was, I recommend picking this up. If you've got a modified PlayStation, I recommend, and I know I probably shouldn't say it, downloading the Ridge Racer Turbo Mode ISO off of one of the ROM sites from somewhere, burning it to a CDR, chucking it in your modified PlayStation and giving it a go, because it's awesome. At 60 hertz there, or 60 frames per second, there is a difference. It runs smoother and even quicker than this, and it's fantastic, guys. So here's the replay, just finishing off. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. That concludes the Ridge Racer series of games. The next video will be Dave and Mike reviews, and I believe we will be taking a look at GT64. So thanks for watching, guys.